Put on. Okay. All right. So we start off with the weekly speech. Welcome, everybody.
Well, it's another happy afternoon.
That's it. That's it. Well, it is happy. It's the month of Adar. Right. So it says, Adar marbim b'simcha. When the month of Adar begins, comes in, we increase in joy. So that, of course, it doesn't mean that we become happy. The Jew is meant to be happy all the time.
Just seeing your photo makes me happy. It's okay.
Thank you. Most people say scary, but but I appreciate your.
Oh, no, they meant scary, not scary.
So it's we increase.
Depends how old you are.
So there's someone once asked the rabbi in the yeshiva about it says when Adar comes in, each day you have to get happier. So how do you do that practically? So he answered tongue in cheek, and I emphasize that it's tongue in cheek and not something to try at home. He says you on the first day of Adar, you have one l'chaim. On the second day, you have two l'chaims. On the third day, you have three l'chaims, right?
Mute, start
now,
video.
Especially now we're in
there's no volume.
Yeah, especially now we're in a Jewish leap year. We've got 60 days of Adar. That would be quite interesting by the time we get to the end. So don't actually try that at home, but we are meant to be extra happy today. So was someone asking a question before? No, I heard someone's voice and then it went off.
Yeah, I thought you were talking about Purim, that every day you drink a little more.
Well, the whole month of Adar, again, we can be happy without drinking also, but it's a special time. So we have Kitzur Shulchan Aruch, the Bridge Total Jewish Law, chapter 92. We did start number 1, but we'll start again. We only got a few lines into it, so we'll start from the beginning. Now, till now, we've had the laws about someone who was moderately sick. We'll say, like someone had a cold or a small cut, nothing serious at all.
Video.
Then we had the situation if, excuse me, if someone's bedridden, or close to bedridden.
Do it one more time for me.
Sorry? No, okay. Or someone who's quite ill.
Well, somebody who is new, who doesn't know how to use the mute.
Okay, it's all right. So we'll mute everyone until you have a question. So if you have a question, please unmute, and otherwise we'll keep everyone muted. But don't be shy. If you have a question, please unmute straight away and ask the question. And now we're discussing a person who's, God forbid, in a life-threatening situation. Right, so you should never know from such things. And should bless us. It all should remain theoretical. But as we discussed many times, most of the mitzvahs, and we're going to see soon today which ones don't, but most of the mitzvahs, including Shabbos, which is what we're speaking about here, are overruled by a life-threatening situation. So, Aleph, number 1, the Chuya hi Shabbos eitzel sekonos nefashos. Shabbos is pushed out of the way. In other words, it doesn't apply.
Doesn't do anything.
When there's a life-threatening situation. Just like all the other mitzvahs of the Torah, get pushed away if there's a life-threatening situation. And again, when we say all except for 3, and we'll get to them later. And therefore, a sick person who is in a life-threatening situation. Now, the Hu Adam Kosher. Now we say he's a kosher person. Now, the reason we say he's a kosher person over here is that God forbid, if there's a person, I mean, he wasn't Jewish, just as an example, you have a little Hitler type person wandering around. This person, you don't need to break Shabbos to save him. You could let him go on his merry way. As they, one of my sons went through a stage where he didn't wish anyone to go to, the netherworld. He used to say to certain people, go to Gan Eden, go to heaven, was his way of, anyway. So certain people, there's no mitzvah to save them, right? But when we say Adam kosher, a regular person, a kosher person, a person doesn't have to be perfect. Even the Taiwan, even though sometimes he does the wrong thing, right? Every one of us, we're honest with ourselves. We've sometimes not done everything that we know that we should have done, or done something that perhaps we think we should not have done. But it's not because we want to be evil, we want to be carried away. Now, even if it's just a child, only 1 day old. And the reason we mention
Why is it on mute?
is because we say normally that a person, till they've lived a month, once a person's lived a month, they have a certain, it's called a kiyum. We look at them as a viable person. So with someone who has not yet lived a month, they haven't proved that they're viable. But nevertheless, even this child who's only 1 day old, mitzvah l'chalal lavas Shabbos. All these situations, it's a mitzvah to transgress Shabbos to save this person's life. Now, if the sick person does not want to be saved, we force
I can
him.
hear it if I put it to my ear.
Rabbi, it's this Barbara Levy family.
Yeah, maybe you need to adjust your volume. Maybe to adjust the volume, might hear better. Yeah, we'll see how we go. It's new to technology, perhaps. Anyway, we force the person. But oven gobble biyad aliyos chassid shaita, and it's a terrible sin, for lack of a better translation, to be a chassid shaita, pious fool. As we mentioned last week, the classic case in the Talmud of the pious fool, of the chassid shaita, as someone who's passing a river and he sees a lady is swimming and they didn't have bathing suits like we have today. She was in the river and she's drowning. And he says, oh, I better not save her because, it would be immodest to save her. So we say this person is a pious fool, is being very pious about the laws of modesty, but something far more important, this person's life, God forbid. So someone who, when the halacha says, when the Jewish law says, we need to break Shabbos to save them, then they have to listen, and being a pious fool, a chassid shaita, if they don't. I mean, at the end of the day, why do we keep Shabbos to start with? Because Hashem said, and under these circumstances, Hashem said not to. So if we're doing it for Hashem, it shouldn't make a difference. Because if this person, Shaloi this Rapper Bishvil Eizer Issa, he doesn't want to become healed through this thing that is normally not permitted. But all of Ne'emar, and about this person, this pious fool, the verse says, I'm going to seek his blood. In other words, he's like a murderer because he's suicided himself when he was meant to, instead of breaking Shabbos or having something that wasn't kosher, when he was meant to. Because in these cases, when it's a life-threatening situation, that overrules. And the fact that he didn't, he's held accountable. So not only is a person held accountable if they don't break Shabbos, but the Zoriv, the Chalul Shabbos, B'shul Choy the Sheish B'Sakona, whoever hurries, they go quickly and enthusiastically to break Shabbos to save a person's life. Hurries and Meshubach, we praise this person. In other words, not only is it not negative, it's actually positive. We need to save this person. Shabbos does not apply here. And not only we can do it, but even there's a non-Jew right there. So let's say I'm standing in the street and there's another Jew and a non-Jew. And the other person, God forbid, they have a heart attack. So even though there's a non-Jew there who I could ask to call the ambulance, I should do it myself. Because by asking someone else, there might be a moment delay. And the moment delay can make the big difference. Okay, the truth is, if it's Shabbos, I probably don't have the phone. So maybe I'm going to ask the non-Jew because that'll be the quickest. But the point that we're making is that even if there's someone who's not Jewish available, we don't waste a second. You run, do it yourself. If it's something that you can do, the means to do. To save, even to break it, to break Shabbos to save a life on Shabbos. And whoever breaks Shabbos to save the life of a sick person whose life is in danger, even if it came out afterwards that you didn't need to break Shabbos, right? You thought the guy was having a heart attack. You called the ambulance. It came out. He was just he had a spasm. I don't know. It was something that wasn't as serious, right? But you made the decision based. I just finished and we'll have the question. You made the decision based on the best of knowledge you had at the moment, right? You don't have to know for a fact that someone's dying. You had the appearance. So he dropped down. He passed out. He's holding his chest. You know, you thought, God forbid, you quickly called the ambulance and they came and ended up being something not so serious. You know, he had heartburn. I don't know what it was. Nevertheless, this person still gets reward from Hashem, right? Because he did the right thing based on the information he had. So Gagoin is giving example. For the doctor says, this sick person needs to eat one dried fig. Right? That's his medicine. And what happened? So 10 people ran out of shul. They heard the doctor. 10 people ran out of shul. Each of them plucked a fig on Shabbos. So each of them broke Shabbos. They carried it back in the public domain. So all 10 of them, you only needed one. Every one of them gets a great reward from Hashem. Even if it ended up that he was healthier than they thought in the first place, and he didn't even need it. So just the fact you do what seems to need to be done under the circumstances, that is what you do, and you don't have to worry about it. Sorry, Robert, you had a question.
Yes, the question is, or the statement is, obviously it's a mitzvah to observe the Sabbath and the Yom Tov.
Yes.
But in saving a life is the greatest mitzvah one can make. Yes. Again, with the adage is saving a life is like saving a universe, right? Or yes. Other, okay. So it behooves us to save a life, irrespective of that person, whether we like them or not. They're a soul and they're one of God's creations, children, let's say.
Yes, generally.
Okay.
Although I'm going to say the exception, you know, like I said, you know, if you had a Hitler going around and he had a heart attack.
Oh, yeah. Well, yeah.
You know, that you don't need to call the ambulance.
I got it.
Just
or a medic.
You know,
right.
For sure. In other words, you know, we we don't believe that you actually save people's lives at the expense of lots of other people, you know.
Right.
So this is as a side point to this, is to sort of help explain the idea. You know, we know that Yitzchok had two sons, Yaakov, who was a great guy, and then he had another son, Esau, who was quite nasty. And Yitzchok wanted to bless Esau. Now, there's many factors of why he wanted to bless him, many reasons. But one of the reasons is that Esau did things that, if they were done for the right reasons, would have been a huge mitzvah. Unfortunately, he did it for the wrong reasons. So, for an example, Esau killed Nimrod. Now, Nimrod was, I guess in today's terms, we call him the evil dictator. And he murdered people left, right, and center. Whoever didn't do exactly what he wanted. He had people worship him, like he put up idols of himself. And if they didn't pray to him, he murdered them. You know, he killed newborn babies. You're talking about he was absolute psychopath, and Esau killed him. Now, if he would have killed him for the right reasons, in other words, to save the world, right? He got this brutal, evil dictator who not just did things in the past, he's ongoing doing things. And he's not the kind of guy who gets put in jail. He's got a whole army. So if a person killed him to save the lives of all other people, it would have been a mitzvah. This would be like someone assassinating Hitler in the middle of the war, doing it to save other people's lives. But Esau, although he killed him, it wasn't for that reason. Esau had inherited a set of clothes that belonged to Adam, the original human, and he wanted his suit. He killed him for his clothes. That's why he killed him. Which, it's terrible. You don't kill people because you want their clothes. All right, God forbid. So this is one of the reasons why Yitzchok thought he was a good guy, because he did things, and Yitzchok presumed he did it for the right reason. I just gave one example, but there's quite a few other things. He presumed it was for the right reasons, and unfortunately, was for the wrong reasons. So, you know, when we're doing things for the right reasons, you know, we feel there's a potential risk to someone's life. We think it's a dangerous situation, and we break Shabbos if it's anything's for the right reasons, even if it comes out afterwards, that, you know, it wasn't as serious as we had presumed. And sometimes, you know, the example I gave, when a person collapsed and you think and he's holding his chest, you don't have time to start, well, let's see, is it a heart attack or is it something else? You know, because if it is a heart attack, God forbid, every second is precious. So there's not time to do a thorough, you know, research into it. You just got to act. So even if it comes out that it was something that wasn't as serious, or it came out that other people were able to take care of it, the fact that you have made the best decision with the knowledge that you had, you're acting, doing things for the right reasons, then this is a mitzvah. And it's not every mitzvah is overruled, but Shabbos is overruled. David.
Yeah, a friend of mine is a medical doctor in shul, and he says to me, anytime an older person says to you, I don't feel good, take it seriously and err to the side of caution.
It's correct. Correct. You know, many people understate, you know, when they're really feeling off. So it's, you know, obviously if the person's sitting there with a smile and just says, I don't feel 100%, you know, and doing a little dance, you don't necessarily have to be all that concerned. But if a person makes a comment, which even the comment doesn't seem to be so serious, but by looking at them, you see they're not how they should be. It's always better to err on the side of caution. You know, Baruch Hashem, many shuls have doctors in attendance. So it's can even get someone checked up without having to make the phone call or whatever it is. But if need be, again, as we said, even if it comes out that it's not such an issue, not only it wasn't wrong, but it was good. Hashem's going to give all the reward. And not that we do things for the reward, but it shows the point that it was really the right thing to do. Okay. Now, the same thing applies for any life-threatening situations. Now, not only life-threatening situation, but even doubtful doubtful life-threatening situations. So let's say, you don't need to know that the person is going to drop dead, God forbid, if you don't do something. You have to have a reasonable suspicion. So, you see something, and it's, you don't know for a fact, but you have a genuine concern. It's a possibility. Even the fact that it's only a possibility, we're allowed, it's a mitzvah to break Shabbos and to do anything he needs, even if it's a Torah prohibition. Now, of course, it has to be a reasonable doubt. Because someone sneezed, you don't have to be concerned. Oh, they sneezed once. It could be, who knows what. I better throw him in the car and take him to the hospital right now. Right? So, but if there's anything that gives a cause to be concerned, we gave the example, person's holding their chest. Now, it could just be very bad heartburn, could be, but there's a reasonable concern that it's something more serious. So therefore, we take the appropriate action. There's nothing, at least in respect to Shabbos, and at the end of the next law, we're going to give some exceptions. We're going to say when life-threatening situation does not overrule. But as far as Shabbos is concerned, nothing stands in the way of a life-threatening situation. Now, it's a little bit repetitive, but he's just emphasizing the point because it's very important, because we don't want the pious fools. The Torah was given to us to live the life of Torah. Now, as it says, that a person should do these, meaning the commandments or the mitzvahs, should keep Judaism, and live them. The simple meaning of the verse means that we should not only observe Judaism, it should be our life. It should be, we should live it. I taught at a school in Australia where their motto was, where Judaism is not just another subject, it's a way of life. Right? That's what the verse means literally. But we learn out from here, we're meant to do the mitzvahs when we're going to live, not in a way that's going to make us die. Now, again, there are 3 exceptions. We'll get to them later today. But except for those 3 exceptions, everything else is overruled if it means by keeping this mitzvah, a person will not live. What are the 3? We're going to say it now. Chutz, the 3 are avodah zarah, idol worship. Someone says, worship the idol or we're going to kill you. So the person has to give up their life. Next one is giloy arois, immorality. Person says, have a sexual relationship with this person that the Torah says you can't. A married person, a relative, same sex, whatever it happens to be. And they say, do that or they're going to kill you. The person has to give up their life. Shvichas domim, the other one is murder. Third one is murder. They say, don't murder this innocent person or they're going to kill, not you, God forbid, but someone else. Then again, as the saying in the Talmud says, his blood is not better than my blood. right? So I can't kill an innocent person to save myself. I can kill the person trying to kill me in self-defense if that's, I mean, minimum force necessary. If you don't need to kill him, you don't kill him. But if you had no other choice, you can kill the person trying to kill you in self-defense, but you can't kill an innocent person to save your life. Those three, idol worship, the immorality, and the murder, these three, a person has to give up their life rather than transgress. But the any other mitzvah, a person should break the mitzvah in order to save a life. So it's not only, we happen to be speaking about Shabbos here, but maybe a medicine, a vital medicine is not kosher. We mentioned last week about eating on Yom Kippur. People, let's say someone's diabetic, they can't go 26 hours without having something. So they have to eat even on Yom Kippur. Right? Any mitzvah you can think of, except for these three, life-threatening situation overrules. Right? Any questions? Comments? No. Yeah, Susan.
Rabbi, what about when you're in the military and in the Israeli army, do they allow what on Shabbos? I mean,
yeah. So let's not talk about what any army actually does, because not necessarily even Israel do all the troops, various things run according to Jewish law. But let's just talk about person in general. So it's going to depend on the circumstances. Right? So circumstances means if things are extremely quiet and there's no concern for any danger, then they will be limited what they could do on Shabbos.
right.
And the greater the concern, the more they're allowed to do on Shabbos.
I see.
So it all depends. So I'll give an example. In my shul, around the rabbi, there's a few people who bring a gun on Shabbos. Well, every day, but talking about Shabbos. Now it happens to be we have an Erev, so there's no problem with carrying the gun. The issue is muksa. And the issue is muksa, in other words, something doesn't have a purpose on Shabbos. Can you be using it? Now, under those circumstances, not that I think there's an imminent risk here, but in other words, although muksa is important, don't get me wrong, but in the scheme of things, it's not the biggest priority compared to other parts of Shabbos. So I don't have a problem with them carrying the gun. We prefer if it's covered, because that's another issue of having open weapons in the shul. But if there was not an Erev, then it would depend. If there was there were incidents and there's concerns, then
Right.
then you would say they could carry it. But Baruch Hashem, at least over here, things are relatively quiet, and haven't had Hashem should keep it that way. Should bless us all, should stay quiet. So you would probably say, although some people might say, in light of recent events over the last 2-3 years, maybe every shul has to have a certain concern. So, whatever it is. So what you can do, I'm not trying to avoid answering the question.
No, I understand.
I think, yeah. So it's really the time and place and circumstances, and every place could change also, depending as things change. Whenever there's a concern for life or potential concern, you can do what you need to do.
Right.
Robert, yes.
I think what happened in Texas a couple of weeks ago, and the dictate for us to welcome the stranger, provides for somewhat of a crisis in conscience. And how do you deal with all of that?
Well, slightly off the topic, but I'll just tell you, so I've been in schools, I teach, I've been principal and different things. So you have to teach children about personal safety, both to avoid abuse but even other things. I mean, kids have to know. So one of the sort of logos that we use is maximum respect, maximum suspect. So if someone approaches you, a stranger, you might be polite and give them directions, but you also keep your distance, right? So maximum respect, maximum suspect. And I think although it's traditionally been something that we've emphasized more to children because they're smaller, they're weaker, and therefore they have to be more aware, and sometimes children are more naive. But when it comes to people we don't know in our shuls, I think it's the same thing. You can welcome someone in and still have someone else or the same person keeping a very careful eye on them. When it's someone you don't know, in today's times. It sounds terrible, but unfortunately, sometimes that's the case.
The times we live in.
That's right. And just to mention, a lot of these things work with the kids. A colleague of mine, he emphasized in his school, he always they start already in preschool, telling kids that if an adult tells you to keep a secret from your parents, you always have to tell your parents straight away. Any adult, right? Any adult that's not yet. So what happened was, the second grade girls, their mothers were coming in for Shavuos, and the girls made them flowers. It wasn't real flowers, they made it in art, and it was going to be a gift to their parents, to the mothers. And the teacher told them, keep it a secret. It's going to be a surprise to your parents. And all the kids went home because it's been drilled into them already for 5 years, and told their parents that we got told to keep a secret, and it was to give the flowers. Right? And all the parents, or most of the parents, called up the principal. All the adults had a good laugh, but it showed that by drilling this idea into the kids, it worked. Baruch Hashem. So everyone was actually very pleased about it, even though it sort of spoiled the surprise for the mothers when they came in for a Mother's Daughter Day. But, this is the same thing. And I think sometimes in our communities, maximum suspect, maximum respect, maximum suspect. It's I think it's a good way to look at things. So we can sort of do both at the same time. We can be friendly, we can be warm, we can be welcoming and open, while also taking precautions. Okay. Number 2. So number 2 is going to speak about there's no doctor around. And, I don't know everyone's background, but most of us aren't qualified to be able to say if there's a life-threatening situation. Sometimes very obvious, God forbid there's a car accident, people are damaged, God forbid you see it's an emergency. But there are a lot of times where we don't really know. So, number 2, kol adam she'omer, any person. When we say any person, we're not talking about a sane, regular, any regular person. To omer that he says, or she says, Maki ani ba'oise chayda shul mesukan. I recognize that this person is in danger. So let's just use an example. The diabetic had low blood sugar level, and they're fainting. And this person, they have a relative, even though they're not a doctor, they don't have background, but they had a relative been in a similar situation, so they recognize it. So they say, now again, it doesn't have to be that. It doesn't have to be a whole elaborate background that they knew someone. But the point is, an unqualified person, they're telling you, I recognize this is a life-threatening situation. And there's no doctor that contradicts that. Right? So you've got a regular person saying this is a life-threatening situation, and in shul you've got a bunch of doctors and they're all saying, he's just he's just got the hiccups, then we listen to the doctors or doctor, even one doctor. But there's no doctor who is contradicting. So maybe he's not sure, maybe there is no doctor. But there's no medical contradiction. And a regular person is saying they know. We're going to believe this person and we're going to break Shabbos. Right? So it doesn't just have to be, that the top surgeon in the world comes and says, you have to do something here. Even a regular person, and that might mean there's more chance of getting it wrong. Could be. But as we said before, in the previous law, we can only go on the information that we have. So if we feel that's the case, as long as there's no doctor saying otherwise, we're going to do what we need to do. Even if the person, the non-doctor, is saying, I'm not 100% sure, but it looks like it to me. I think this is what's happening. So you can have someone, I think this person's having a stroke, God forbid, they're not really sure, they don't have the medical background, but they've been told certain symptoms and the certain things being passed around, and it seems to them, they're not 100% sure. When there's no doctor to say either way, it's the fact that it appears strongly to them. You still have to break Shabbos because based on the information we have a legitimate concern that this is a life-threatening situation. So, we are going to listen to this person's opinion and we'll be Mechal Shabbos, we'll break Shabbos, because we have a rule, that's the term in halacha, Safek Nefashis Lahakel means even a doubtful life-threatening situation will be lenient and say we can do things. Now, that's if there's no doctor or no medical opinion to say anything. Let's say you have one doctor and he says this person's life's in danger, we have to do whatever. Let's say go to hospital or give him this medicine. And there's another doctor who says not necessary. He's stabilized, you can wait till after Shabbos. Or the sick person themselves says, actually, he tells the doctor's overreacting, I'm feeling fine. We listen to the doctor who says he does need. Okay, if you have 10 doctors who say he's fine and one doctor who says it's dangerous, then maybe we're going to listen to the majority. But even if you have 2 doctors and one is telling you we need to do something on Shabbos that normally can't do to save this person, and another doctor saying it's not necessary, we are going to listen to the doctor says we do need to break Shabbos, just to be on the safe side. And if there's a doctor says we do need to break Shabbos, and the patient is saying, look, I'm feeling good inside. I don't feel sick. Nevertheless, listen to the doctor, again, to be on the safe side. Now, let's say it's, yes.
I'll give you a Maaseh Shehaya with respect to my father. A couple of days before he passed away, we normally, when a patient is not feeling very well, there will be a day in which he feels fantastic. It's as if nothing was wrong with him. In fact, he wanted to get out of the bed and go upstairs and go and daven and everything else. But we knew he was at that stage where you get that very short burst of energy, etc. And I had to actually tell my father to get back into bed because I couldn't take the chance of him getting out of bed and collapsing.
Yes.
And this is basically this example that you're giving, is that, if someone says, I'm feeling fine, it's better to err on the side of caution than on the other side.
100%. No, thank you. That's that when we put it to real examples, it makes it more understandable, less theoretical. Okay. So, and sometimes a patient doesn't realize how serious they are. I mean, I don't want to get too off the top, but 15 years ago, I had pneumonia. Now, I don't normally go to doctors very much. Baruch Hashem, I'm generally pretty healthy. So the fact that I went to the emergency room already said something. But anyway, while I was there, they sort of try out you, they have a look at you. And one of the things they did was they took my blood oxygen level. And just as they checked it, a car accident came in. And when they saw my blood oxygen level, they put me in ahead of the people who came from the car accident. Then I got worried. Till that point, I wasn't worried. Obviously I wasn't feeling great. Otherwise I wouldn't have gone. And I only went to hospital because it was at night. Otherwise I just would have gone to the regular doctor. So, I wasn't feeling so great. Otherwise I obviously wasn't feeling well. That's why I went to the doctor. But at no point did I realize it was really serious. Only at that point. So sometimes the patient isn't able to accurately tell based on how they're feeling anyway. Yes, Susan.
Okay, I hear what you're saying about the oxygen level, but sometimes you don't want to go through having the ambulance come. And I told the doctor that I'm not allowing them to take me to the hospital, that I will drive myself, and I know I'm sick, so don't bother me. And I took myself to the hospital and they admitted me because I had the same problem. The oxygen level was way too low, but I'm a very stubborn person.
So stubborn.
And I want to do it my way.
Right. So sometimes being stubborn is good and sometimes not so good.
Right.
It's, my mother lived many years with terrible health issues. And it was just from being stubborn. There were times where she literally forced herself every breath. Like that, so sometimes it's good to be stubborn, but sometimes not good. So if a person can actually safely drive himself, then that's fine. If a person with low oxygen levels, sometimes a person can pass out, which would be far worse if they're driving a car than anywhere else.
Right.
Now,
but I knew I was able to. I knew I was able to.
So sometimes doctors want to put everyone in ambulance, not because they really think that's what needs to be done, but because they're worried about getting sued.
But they don't know me. The doctor didn't know.
There can be a very small chance, and they're worried about getting sued, but it's not really an issue. And sometimes though, the doctor knows what they're talking about, and they really want to put someone should really go in the ambulance, and people shouldn't be stubborn. So it's a very fine line to say, when you can say yes and when you can say no. I mean, I'm not sure that I'd be advising people to drive themselves to the hospital when the doctor said that to go by ambulance. But, I guess at the end of the day, you did it. You're here, so you made it. Thank God. So I guess in hindsight, it was the right decision. But it's just as we would err on the side of caution to save other people.
Right.
We really need to err on the side of caution to look after ourselves as well. Although I definitely understand you, I'm quite stubborn myself. Not that I'll admit that, but that's how it goes. Right. So we just said the case. The doctor says it's life-threatening situation. The patient says I'm fine. So we listen to the doctor. Now, other way around. The patient says, I need something, I need this medicine. Go out on Shabbos to the drugstore and get it now. I'm like, and the doctor says they don't need it. We'll wait till after Shabbos. We listen to the sick person. So when it comes to being concerned that they're in a life-threatening situation, we'll listen to the sick person against the doctor. In other words, we'll break Shabbos for the sick person's say so, even if the doctor doesn't say. But if it's the other way around, the person says, I'm feeling fine, we'll listen to the doctor. In other words, a doctor has an advantage because they have greater medical knowledge. A patient has an advantage because it's self-knowledge. They know themselves how they're feeling. So we're going to be lenient. We're going to break Shabbos according to either of them, because each one has advantage of the other. However, if the doctor says this medicine they're asking for is going to damage them, then we listen to the doctor. So the person says, I need to eat, pig brain. All right, that's the only medicine. And the doctor says, well, actually, for this person's condition, it's going to make it worse. So here we go, listen to the doctor. If it was a case where the person says, I need the medicine now, and the doctor says, I'm not sure, I don't think it's an emergency now, well, they can survive without it, we'll listen to the patient. But if that's because he just says it's not life-threatening situation. We've got a difference of opinion about whether it's life-threatening situation or not. However, if the patient says they need something for a life-threatening situation, and the doctor says that this medicine is actually going to cause harm, not help, then we listen to the doctor. Because we say that they're great expertise. We're not debating now whether it's life-threatening or not. But now it comes to a question of medical expertise. And we're going to say that the doctor knows better in this case. And therefore, we will listen to the doctor. Right. Now, this is, of course, presuming the doctor knows what they're speaking about as well. It's, not necessarily does someone who's an expert in skin conditions be able to tell you, something about brain surgery or something, and vice versa. So. But if they're knowledgeable in that field, let's leave it there. Okay, Gimel, number 3. Imroifer Boki. If the doctor is an expert doctor, okay, maybe I'll give a bit of a background over here. We're till now we've been speaking about Jewish doctors. So in other words, what do we mean by Jewish doctor in this case? In other words, we're talking about someone who has both the medical knowledge and has an appreciation of Shabbos, or whatever other mitzvah happens to be. But we're talking about Shabbos at the moment. And the doctor is saying that this is a life-threatening situation. We've got to put him in the ambulance or use the defibrillator, whatever happens to be. So we're taking his word for it, even though he hasn't proven it. Just the fact that he says we're just going to do it. Now, if there's a non-Jewish doctor who, doesn't really have a Jewish appreciation of Shabbos, then what he calls a life-threatening situation may potentially be not so important. So we're going to differentiate in this case between two different things. If you have a doctor that's an expert, in other words, he's recognized as an expert in this field. So the non-Jewish doctor, he says to you, this is a heart attack. and he's a doctor that is has an expertise in this field, and he has a reputation at stake, right? If the person's going to, you can imagine if a doctor's going to rush people to hospital because they've got an ingrown toenail, you do it 2-3 times, they've lost their reputation. So someone who's an expert in the field, whatever happens to be, so we're going to believe them, even though they don't have an appreciation of Shabbos. So number 3, Imraifa Boki. He's a skilled expert doctor. I feel a guy, he's not Jewish, even though he's not Jewish. Nobody's perfect, right? Aisha, maybe an Omer, or someone who is knowledgeable says. So that was number 1 case. Expert doctor, even though he's not Jewish. Or we have another next case. Someone who he's knowledgeable, and he says, at the present moment, it's not a sakana. Nevertheless, if we don't do this treatment, it's going to get, or even could, never mind if it will, become more serious, and it will become life-threatening situation. And again, simple example, a person is bleeding heavily. They're not dying in the next 10 minutes. But if you leave it for an hour or 2, God forbid, right, then it becomes a life-threatening situation. Right now, it's not life-threatening. But if, or something along those lines. Even if the sick person says, I'm fine. We're going to listen to the doctor and we're going to break Shabbos. So in other words, it's not only that we trust only a Jewish doctor because he understands what Shabbos is, but even a non-Jewish doctor, as long as he's a skilled doctor, I mean, qualified, he knows what he's talking about. We're going to listen to him as well. And we're also going to break Shabbos in a situation where a person is not currently in danger, but they will be. And again, a simple example of this, and it's an example we've given in the past, let's say a diabetic, and they have to inject themselves with insulin every day. So let's say normally they do it every day at 9 o'clock in the morning, let's say. Now, come Shabbos, if they don't inject themselves at 9 o'clock in the morning, they're not going to, God forbid, drop dead at 9:01. As a matter of fact, they might be fine at 11 o'clock. But if we're going to wait till 9 o'clock at night, God forbid, it's going to become serious by then. Again, that people can be in a worse situation with the diabetes and a better situation. Some people don't actually really need injection, but in a situation where they do need it. So we don't have to wait until 5:30 when they're fainting from their, whatever it is. You can give the injection as usual at 9 o'clock, even though currently they're not in a life-threatening situation. Now, that's a situation where we know it will turn into a life-threatening, but even a doubt, let's say, again, we use examples, someone passed out in shul or something, and, a doctor rushes over and he says, right now they're stable, but we need to do whatever. And if we don't, it's going to become serious. So we don't have to wait until it becomes serious. We can be proactive and do whatever we need to do, because even if it's only a possibility. Now, when I say possibility, I guess there's a certain percentage that anyone in the world, no matter how healthy they look, God forbid, something can happen to them. What I mean is a reasonable concern, right? There's a reasonable concern that something is going to develop into something more serious, then we're going to act on it, even though it's not yet serious. Okay. Number 4. Kol maka shebefnim haguf. Any internal injury. Any internal injury. Now, what's the definition of internal? From the lips inwards. So it doesn't have to just be, like, in your torso, even in the mouth, in other words, any internal injury. The gamma shenayim bechlal, which even includes the teeth. That this wound is from type a blow. A person got hit or banged, or this type of blister that causes breaks, comes a wound. We will straight away break Shabbos, and we don't have to do a medical evaluation. In other words, if a person is bleeding on the run, we can very easily evaluate it. We can look at it, as a paper cut, or God forbid, or anything in between. But internal injuries, we can't judge that by looking at them. They're gonna have to. We have to take, have to take serious action. So and it could be once they get to the hospital and they have a scan, it's a nothing. God willing, should be, that's all it should be. But just in case, we can't take chances. Now, even if there's no doctor, there's no expert, there's no one saying that they need to go to hospital, and the patient doesn't know either. They're not giving opinion either way. We do for them whatever we would do during the weekday. So if it's a type of injury where you have to make an appointment and go whenever, so we could do that also. And we can wait till after Shabbos. But if this was the kind of thing that during the week, we'd rush to the hospital to be on the safe side, then on Shabbos, we're going to rush into hospital as well. No, we don't mess around with anything that's internal. Avol, however, if we know that it's something that's not that serious and it can wait till after Shabbos, we can wait till after Shabbos. Right? And one of my kids, when they're little, they burn themselves on Shabbos. So it was not a serious burn, Baruch Hashem. It was not a serious burn. And, with kids, even they're on the side of caution even more, because, especially the younger they are, the more you do something. But I felt from the circumstances, like going to a long story, that we could wait till Shabbos is finished. It was Shabbos afternoon, it was late, it wasn't a serious thing. We anyway went to the emergency room, just to be on the safe side after Shabbos, but it wasn't something. And again, Baruch Hashem was the correct decision. It wasn't anything major. Just went after Shabbos just to get a doctor to look at it, just in case. But it was a minor situation. If it would have been, God forbid, something more serious, or even we had a doubt of being more serious, then you'd run them on Shabbos regardless. So if it's something you can recognize, it's not such a big thing. I mean, we were putting it in water and different cold water. In the meantime, just morph. But it healed very quickly. No scarring. That was not a thing. Yes, Susan. Yes.
Sometimes you have people that are always complaining and always kvetching. You don't know them very well, and that's very hard to read.
Yes, it is, and it can be very problematic because on the one hand you don't want to overreact.
Right.
On the other hand, you don't want to
react.
That's right. And as the I guess that's the story of the boy called Wolf, right? So it makes problems. But I think you have to try and look at like body language. The people that do kvetch, but you can see, they're doing all right. But if you have even a concern, someone doesn't quite look right, or they're not quite acting right, or there's something even a bit off with how they're speaking, whatever it is, then err on the side of caution.
Yeah.
It's
especially when they have high blood pressure. I get scared. I have two friends that both have high blood pressure, and I have to, it's just very hard. It's very difficult.
It is, and some people, their nature, they just they're always kvetching, so
Yep,
it's
yep.
that does make it difficult. But it's but again, as we said, if you have concern, if it comes out that it wasn't something so serious, if you acted on something that you felt at the moment was legitimate concern, and you did whatever you did was in good faith, then Hashem appreciates it.
It can't be faulted.
That's right. That's right. We just finished the number 4. So pain is not considered a wound. So although we're talking about internal injury, or even external for that matter, but just feeling pain, again, we know that chest pains, for example, can be a sign of something else, or pains in the arm or shoulder. But we don't mean that. Just someone who is feeling pain, that's not called a wound. But if a person has a toothache, so a regular toothache, we're not going to say it breaks Shabbos for. But a person has a toothache that the suffering is so great that they feel ill all over. We're talking about when there's an infection, that's a really bad, the person has got a fever, the bedridden, something, it's something like that. The mutlon the goyish, you can even, you can go to a non-Jewish dentist, get it taken out, whatever you need to do on Shabbos, in other words. So you can have to remove the tooth. That's all right. Hey, number 5. Oh, I just looked at the clock. We've gone. We would have been going all day. I would never even realized. It's so just a reminder. Not everyone was on when we first started. 95% chance next week we're having a guest speaker. I'll be on also. I'll introduce you. A prominent rabbi from Israel is going to discuss some of the medical issues on Shabbos. He's a member of a very prominent, based in Israel. He's going to discuss some of the questions that came to them. And so we can see how we apply practically some of these ideas more in the modern world. And as I mentioned, he just had a baby girl. So he's expecting, God willing, should all be settled. Things should be more calm in his house next week. So he should be able to join us. But if not, it'll be the next week. So, yeah. So have a wonderful week.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Adar.
Very
Great
interesting.
class. Thank
Yep.
you.
Thank
You're
you.
very
you,
welcome.
Rabbi.
Wonderful Shabbos.
Big Shabbos.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.